Good evening. Welcome to the West Seneca School Board of Education meeting. This meeting is live stream, and we do have an active audience today. They can speak as when we get to the appropriate place. And we welcome you all here, and we all wear our masks in, and once we got to our place, as long as we were 6 feet apart, some of us chose to take off our masks, especially those that speak a little longer. It's a little easier to hear me if my mask is off. So, Mr. Bedient, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll first hear from our superintendent, Mr. Bystrat.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight, and those that are viewing live stream. I just wanted to start off, first of all, by saying it's good to actually have people back here in public, and we intend to continue with this. So I just think this is a good thing to have folks here with us. I also wanted to take just a couple of minutes. It's National School Board Appreciation Month. I don't know the extent to which people realize just how much work our school board members and school board members across the country put in on a monthly basis, but the job is more than just a meeting or two a month. There's quite a bit of work that takes place and legwork that takes place and a lot of reading of documents and understanding things. There's just quite a bit of work that goes into being a school board member, so I'd like to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to our school board members for all the work. And I can tell you the past 6-7 months since we've been shut down with COVID and having to work through things has been particularly challenging, and I can say that all of our school board members have been very actively engaged in ensuring that they still keep the lines of communication open for us with the public, and I just think that I'd like to say thank you for them to be able to do that. So, all right, so I know we have some other agenda items, some presentations. I know a few folks probably want to be able to speak as well, but there were a few things I just wanted to be able to talk a little bit about. Last week, the past couple of weeks, I've done some some video communications with our community just to talk a little bit about some of the plans we have moving forward. I will say that just, I guess, sort of rehashing the last one, we are actively planning at this point to be able to bring our certain populations of our students back onto campus for some form of in-person instruction and learning. One of the things that we're looking at, I mentioned this before, are students that are maybe have some special needs that take place in smaller classroom programs. That's a group that we're looking to be able to target for between the end of this month and the beginning of November. We're also looking at students that might be English language learners. We're also looking at students that are getting evaluations and some of our related services like speech and OT and PT. One of the bigger groups, though, that we're looking to be able to bring back would be our elementary school students as well for some form of in-person education and instruction. We're doing that in a phased-in approach. We have had some meetings. We actually sent a survey out that actually closed last week, asking families, and no one, as I said in my last video, no one's committed to anything at this point. We just kind of wanted to have a rough idea as to how many families would be interested in some sort of continuing with a fully virtual model for instruction. I will say we got somewhere probably in the neighborhood of about 470 responses in the week that the survey was open of people interested in doing that. So that puts, at per grade level, you're talking, really K through 5 at this point. It probably puts you at somewhere between 60 and upwards of 70 students per grade level on average. We just wanted to have a sense for how many people that would involve. So before we go ahead and set out with some future plans. Generally speaking, it would be likely that we would be bringing students back and starting with some of the younger grade levels like pre-K and K and 1 and kind of phasing other grades just maybe over the course of a period of weeks beyond that. So just again, really to get people comfortable with the procedures in school, get our students comfortable with the idea of being in school. Right now I can tell you the fully virtual model, we've had a good deal of success and engagement. We've had high attendance rates. That's worked well for us. The model of in-person at this point, our limitations are at something along the lines of what they'd call a hybrid model, where we'd have break our students into basically 2 separate groups, and then there'd be the third group with the fully remote students that we'd be able to bring in half the group for one portion of the week and another group of students for the other portion of the week. So we're not able to bring in all of our students at the same time as per New York State guidelines in terms of occupancy requirements. So some of this may be a little redundant, but I just feel it's important if you're tuning in for the first time to hear a little bit of this. So essentially, we're looking to be able to bring students back in. We see the value of in-person instruction for our students, but one of the biggest things that we want to make sure that we're doing is providing meaningful daily contact between teachers and students. And that's one of the biggest challenges, to be honest with you, because if teachers are teaching students in front of them, it's very difficult to be teaching students, you know, whether it's virtually or in some other way. We want to make sure that it's meaningful and safe. So that's what we've been working on. We actually had a committee meeting last week on this, multi-stakeholder group. We had administrators, Board of Education members, teachers, members of our Civil Service Employees Association. You know, and this week we actually have a meeting scheduled with some parents as well that are going to be included and be able to talk a little bit about some of the ideas that we have in terms of a hybrid model of instruction and phasing students back in. So more to come with that. We hope to be able to communicate over the next week or so with some of these plans, but we are targeting November for the resumption of bringing some of the students back into campus. So that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple presentations tonight. We have Dr. Deanna Stevenson from the Doc Deanna Enterprise, and she's going to speak about our Targeted Support and Improvement Program.
I just asked Mrs. Persico, can you do a little introduction for her?
Okay.
Good evening. As you may be aware, as part of our ESSA accountability, our district and 2 of our middle schools were designated as targeted support and improvement based on previous assessment data from the 18-19 school year. Each of the middle schools were designated based on one subgroup of their entire student population. At East Middle, it was the Black student subgroup, and at West Middle School, the Hispanic student subgroup. And as such, if there is 1 or more schools that are designated as a targeted support and improvement school, such as the district as well. Part of the requirements of having this designation is to create a district comprehensive improvement plan, as well as school comprehensive education plans for each of the middle schools as they were designated. Over the course of the past, I would say 5 months, from March to July, we worked with Dina Stevenson, Dr. Dina Stevenson, who is to my right here, who is an outside educational expert who has been accredited through New York State to work with districts in support of these plans that need to be written and implemented at the building level and as well as the district level. We have embarked on a process that Dina will talk you through to let you know how we worked to come to this plan, and then we'll talk about the 5 priorities that we identified in the plan. Dina does work with a variety of school districts across the state and right here in Western New York. She is also a local community member in Orchard Park. So it's nice to have somebody who's close that we can lean upon for support and assistance as we maneuver the process. And it's nice to know that we have somebody, and we're not alone in this. I do look at this as an opportunity for our district as well to have a unified vision as we work together to make improvements across the district. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Dina Stevenson. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good evening. So as Carm said, can you hear me okay with the mask? Okay. As Carm said, I'm just going to go briefly over the process that we took part in. It started probably little late March, early April to come up with the District Comprehensive Improvement Plan. So some of the outcomes and deliverables tonight is a brief overview of ESSA accountability processing. You've probably already heard it, so it'll be really quick. Share the DSIP planning process, share the priorities that the district created for the District Comprehensive Improvement Plan, and then go through the monitoring process, because after the DSIP is created, there still has to be a monitoring process, because what we don't want to happen is that you have a really nice plan that just sits on someone's desk. And so just real quickly, as Carm did a fantastic job of introducing me, I'm a former physician turned educator. I taught in the city of Buffalo. I taught science. Then I became a principal at a charter school in the city, and then left that charter school and became an elementary principal. It was at that time that my school was designated as a school that was in need of improvement, and I was able to turn the school around in a year and a half and I became like a turnaround principal for the district and decided 5 years ago, maybe I should just like take my show on the road and help other districts do the same. And so I am happy to be close because most of my districts are typically downstate. And so to be able to just get in my car and come down the street is great. So ESSA, you know, in education we have a ton of acronyms. ESSA stands for Every Student Succeeds Act. It is a law that outlines how states can use federal money to support schools. And there are 8 indicators that the state looks at as well as the federal government. And so you see them before you. All schools have accountability related to English language arts, math, science, progress in learning English, and then chronic absenteeism. For the high school, there is also a social studies criteria, graduation rate, and college career and civic readiness. And so, as already has been stated, your district is a target district because of the 2 schools that have been identified as target supported and improvement districts. Schools or TSI schools, that's West and East Middle. And those are the subgroups right there. So this process was over a period of about 3 weeks. We met virtually 6 times for 2 hours, and there were robust sessions that included sessions with teachers, sessions with school leaders, sessions with support staff, community partners, as well as parents, because it was necessary to make sure that the report wasn't created just from people at the district level, that we needed a ton of stakeholders to participate. Hence the reason that I'm actually here tonight, because that was one of the other things that I said. I think that there should be a presentation for the board so that you can see what the priorities were once they had been established. So there are some new guidelines, not going to go into great detail, but the great thing about this year's DSIP is that it's based on priorities and not based on something that the state has kind of pigeonholed you into saying you have to have a priority based on parent involvement. You have to have a priority based on curriculum. It's all based upon whatever it is that you're already doing. And so once we realized that that was what it was going to entail, we decided to take the first 3 priorities right from your pillars of success, because it was something that you're already doing in your district, conversations that you've already had, so why reinvent the wheel? So the first 3 priorities that you see here, and I'm going to go into greater detail, are definitely taken just right from your pillars of success. So after having conversations with all of the various groups, we came up with the other 2 priorities, which you see in front of you, and now I'm just going to go into greater detail of all 5 priorities. So priority 1 was to be able to establish a district-wide practice, system, and process to use data and share data to inform instruction. So you might ask, well, why should this be a priority? Well, the district had done a fantastic job of starting to put a process in place and had a process in place of how teachers use data and share data. Prior to COVID-19, the district had started working with teachers to dive deeper into using data and how to use that data to inform instruction. And so why not, why reinvent the wheel? Let's just continue that practice. And so this is the practice that will continue. And how will we know that it's a success? And so we'll know that it's a success because those data days that you might be familiar with that were already going to be scheduled, you're just going to continue to schedule them. Those data days are the days in which you provide teachers with strategies that they need to use data in their classrooms to help students. So that's going to continue. And then also create and implement a consistent data planning process for all teachers. So no matter what building you go in throughout the district, you're going to see similar systems. It's not cookie cutter, but at least teachers have like a toolkit to start with to be able to use whatever data points that you have to drive instruction. So the second priority, and as I said, this was taken right from your pillars of success, was to be able to establish common literacy practices and strategies. So once again, why? Well, the data day professional developments that had occurred prior to March 13th revealed some gaps in literacy. Just from looking at the data, the buildings realized that there were low-performing subgroups of Black and Hispanic students, and multiple schools in the district received a level 1 on the state assessment as it related to ELA performance. And so, building leaders have started to provide professional development to their teachers to support common literacy practices and strategies to their teachers, as well as establishing a system to, well, the expectation is to provide some type of system for regular informal classroom visits. Keep in mind, when we created this, we weren't really sure what was going to happen in September. And so the state gave us guidance that plan as if school's going to go back into session. And so obviously there's some things that will have to be tweaked. Priority 3 is related to establishing a systematic approach to SEL. There goes another acronym in education. Social emotional learning, to ensure the social emotional needs of students, staff, and families. This was huge when we were planning because, as I said, we were in the very beginning of this global pandemic. And so although the needs of parents and students and staff were being met, we really wanted to make sure that this became a priority because we knew that this was going to be an ongoing issue of support. And so some of the ways that we can identify whether or not success has happened is just having a central location of the vast amount of support systems that the district has. Your district has a ton of supports, but maybe one building doesn't know about another, and so identifying, putting them all in a central location so it could be a resource for the entire district was something that was definitely necessary, as well as having district-wide professional development on trauma-informed classrooms, because the trauma involved with school closures, parents getting sick, family members possibly getting sick, staff members getting sick, and needing just to have that support in place in classrooms. And then creating a team to address the ongoing social emotional needs of the students, of the staff, and of the families. And then this team will create a system for tracking those students who need maybe more interventions than normally would be in place if there wasn't this thing called COVID-19. Priority 4 is related to increasing the variety of reading materials, K through 12, in all content areas, not just English. And so having reading material in science and social studies and math as well. And so the district wants to be able to create opportunities for students to read an additional 15 to 20 minutes throughout the week outside of their English or their ELA classroom. And so being very strategic about giving students an opportunity to do so, and then being able to provide professional development for teachers, because we met with science teachers and social studies and math teachers who said, we think this is a great idea, but we're going to need a little bit of help because we're not ELA teachers, and so providing that professional development for them. And the last priority is establishing a district-wide structure and priorities to allocate resources effectively. And when we talk about resources, we're not just talking about money. We're talking about time, we're talking about people, and especially in this climate because, as your superintendent just mentioned, how to be strategic about students who are going to be physically in front of you versus those that are going to be home. You know, who's going to be able to give them instruction as well as those that are right in front of you. And so being very strategic about allocating people, time, and money. And so some of the ways, the evidence would be creating a system to closely monitor the priorities, and I'm going to talk about that momentarily, but using data to establish priorities for staffing. You know your staffing, and you also know your needs, and so identifying, are you overused, do you have an abundance of staff members maybe in one building versus another, and just being very, once again, strategic and intentional about staffing. Building leaders will monitor the effect of their master schedules and planning for student achievement. And then lastly, leaders will manage their own schedules to ensure that the instruction is monitored on a daily basis. Once again, this was created prior to having to go virtual, but some of these systems can still be in place. And so after all of the priorities, there are action items. And you probably have the document before you. Each priority has a multitude of action items that started in August and will continue till June, just to kind of give leaders and teachers the strategy to identify, can we succeed in fulfilling this priority? And what the great thing about this document, it's a living document. And what I mean by that is that it can change if necessary. There's no one from the state that's going to say you have to, on August 1st, if you didn't do this, then there's going to be repercussions. Absolutely not, because you're a school district, and you're a school district with people, and so things change. And, you didn't know that in August that you were going to have to, well, in August you might have known, but you didn't know in April that school was going to look the way that it does right now. And then lastly, each priority also has at least one COVID-19 challenge that was identified that may actually prohibit the action items, such as on-site meeting, such as professional development, such as traditional classroom visits, and the ability just to collect some data points. And so there's some flexibility with the document. And lastly, the monitoring. Every 3 months, I will be meeting with the district and some of the building leaders to just look at the action items and say, did it happen? If it did happen, great. If it didn't, why did it happen? Just to be like an accountability partner, but not to, mandate anything, because that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of this document is to be a guide to carry you through the school year to hopefully, achieve the priorities that you set forth. That was quick, but that's all I have. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, great plan, and we'll see how it comes to fruition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay, and again, I just wanted to thank Dr. Dina Stevenson for joining us tonight. I hope that the brief presentation highlighted to you that as a result of the designation of 2 subgroups, one at each middle school, a very small segment of our overall student population, we were able to develop a plan that would have far-reaching effects on all of the districts. So we truly look at this as an opportunity to grow and develop from this. And as you could see, there were all steps in there that we already had set in place. You recall our pillars of success that we started to work on last year before we had the emergency school closure. So everything is intertwined and connected, and we really look at this as an opportunity to help propel us forward with those pillars of success and goals as we move forward. So thank you.
Okay, great.
If I could just jump in a little bit, Diane, if you don't mind, so Dr. Stevenson, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And, at the end of the day, too, I know Carmen just mentioned that, you're talking about 2 relatively small subgroups, but we want to make this meaningful. The other thing, too, and we don't get into it a whole lot, but when students don't take the New York State assessments, that also contributes adversely, too. So if you look at those subgroups, I can tell you a significant portion in each did not take the assessment, which counts, honestly, as basically just, it's a 1, essentially, out of 4. So that also has an impact. But as Carm said, we're going to make sure that we make this a meaningful process for everyone. The other thing I wanted to mention, too, was that even though we are fully remote, I can tell you our administrators have been popping into Google Meets on a regular basis. I popped into a couple myself, and there's been some really good, meaningful dialogue that's taken place. One of our administrators had said just before the school year started that this whole idea of the remote start to the school year was going to challenge all of us to sort of get outside of our comfort zone, because this is frankly not something we've ever done on a large scale before. And when you do that, it forces you to really critically evaluate the way that you do business. So that's where a lot of these really great this great dialogue has taken place as a result of people having to step outside of that comfort zone yet still effectively communicate and educate their kids. So again, I look forward to this process continuing. So thank you very much for your assistance.
Okay, and I was going to say, this is also a grant program, so it doesn't cost the district
Yep.
anything to have this extra help to
Correct.
get us over some of these humps that we need to get over.
Correct.
So that's another great thing about it. Okay, every year we have to do, or a group has to do an audit of our books. So we have a representative from Drescher and Malecki here today, and if you would come up and give us your findings. Hopefully they're good.
Matt Montalbo, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm here to present the results for the audit for the district's year ended June 30th, 2020. I met previously with the audit committee, went through the communications in detail. I'm going to share some of those for the board here tonight. There's a PowerPoint handout in front of you. I'm going to kind of guide you through it. The first 2 pages, we shared our required communications with the committee. The 2 most important areas is first to lay out what the objective of the audit is, and that really is to provide an opinion on the district's financial statements. So do these financial statements fairly represent the district's financial position and results of operations? So can they be relied upon by outside third parties as well as by the board in making your difficult budget decisions? So just kind of laying out that objective. And then we did conduct our audit, conducted our procedures, and concluded that the district's financial statements do fairly represent your financial position. So we issued what's referred to as an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements. So we believe that they can be relied upon by not only outside third parties, but the district internally. On page 3 of the document, I just want to go through a couple of trends. First, the general fund 5-year trend, revenues versus expenditures. Now, over this time period, the general fund revenues have exceeded expenditures, but you can see that gap is starting to narrow. And for the year ended 1920, revenues exceeded expenditures in the amount of approximately $725,000. And so that is what the general fund increased as far as fund balance. What's notable is, as you can see, the expenditure side is increasing, not a surprise to anybody, but the revenue side is starting to flatten out, and that primarily is the result of state aid and some of the challenges that are happening on the state level, as well as some economic factors, because the district gets a portion of sales tax from the county. If that sales tax revenue or that consumption declines, the amount that's shared to local governments and school districts declines. So those are 2 areas that are starting to flatten out, and there's a lot of uncertainty in those areas. On page 4, the expenditure side, just looking over the last 5 years, going back 5 years ago, the district's expenditures in the general fund were about just over $108 million. When you fast forward to 1920, just over $120 million. So about an 11% increase over that time. When you look at your current budget, the budget is laid out at about $130 million. So, we see these trends across Western New York with school districts. It's just the nature of operations when you're talking about, employee costs, contractual costs, New York State retirement costs. Those are all on, an increasing trend. Where the difficulty comes in is when those revenues start to flatten out. And that's kind of what we're seeing in the situation with the New York State budget and COVID. On page 5, we lay out the fund balance. So we looked at that last trend, the revenues versus expenditures. How does that impact your equity or your fund balance position? And you can see you've had some favorable increases over the last 5 years. We talked about that $725,000 increase from 1819 to 1920. Your total fund balance at the end of June 30th, 2020 was $25.9 million. We break it into restricted and unrestricted funds. Your restricted funds are just over $18.4 million. Now that's important because these are areas of potential exposure for the districts going forward, whether it be workers' compensation, capital projects, unemployment, costs, retirement costs. So you have reserves within each one of these areas that will give you a little bit more flexibility when you're talking about these budget challenges. So you've been able to increase that over time. You can see from $3.6 million back 5 years ago to $18 million. And then the other portion represents unrestricted, or what's referred to as assigned and unassigned. Assigned fund balance equated to about $2.2 million. Now this, you use about 2.2 in your budget process to balance the budget. And then the remaining portion is truly the available portion. That's $5.1 million. So your unassigned portion has some restrictions from real property tax law. You're allowed 4% of your next year's budget, so that $130 million budget. You're allowed to have 4% of that. You're right at that level, so you are in compliance with real property tax law, and you're maintaining 4% of available fund balances. Really, as far as, kind of concluding on the audit and the operations, where I want to leave it is, as of June 30th, 2020, the district's in a stable position as far as fund balance and your trends. You have some flexibility. We talked about the reserves and the restricted fund balance. But I think what I've been saying to districts and throughout the state is there's caution right now because of how difficult budgets are and the uncertainty with revenues, particularly state aid. We're already starting to see a 20% reduction in the most recent state aid payment. That is expected to continue on the state level, and so you're seeing those cuts start to come to fruition. And then on the sales tax side, projecting out as compared to the prior year, it's running anywhere from 10 to 20%, from the prior year. So the difficulty is in predicting how is it going to react going forward. On the state aid side, staying conservative, obviously, I think is a good trend. Same thing on the sales tax side. But that's really the biggest challenge out there for districts. But for West Seneca, you're in a stable position as of the end of 20. But that's kind of what, the biggest communication that I can give you right now is that the budgets are very difficult right now going forward. But a clean audit from an audit standpoint. I'll take any questions or concerns from the board. Yes?
Yeah, okay, so you foresee that the state is probably going to give us a 20% cut down, correct?
We've already seen the delay of 20% in the last payment, yes.
Okay, so you assume that's going to go forward. They're going to continue to keep that, if not more, correct?
Yes. We'll say 20% is a fair estimate. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Okay, does anybody from the audit committee want to have any input or any observations or anything?
No, I think it's really good. We sat for our own presentation for the audit committee a little earlier. Appreciate it. All our questions were answered. And
Great.
great job.
Yeah, they met for over an hour, going through this, so.
Yes, we did go over it in detail, and there was a lot of good discussion back and forth, and I think it's difficult because nobody has the answers right now, and it's just a matter of monitoring and continually updating your estimates, and I think the audit committee and the board's on top of that, as well as management. So
This
yes.
eliminates any probability of federal funding, a little help for some of our COVID expenses and so forth? You don't
as
know
far
about that?
on the federal level,
Right. 'Cause we've been talking to the
yeah,
legislators,
I probably wouldn't comment on that, but
No, but we've been talking to the legislators from our
Yes.
legislative committee, and we're hopeful that there will be something coming, at least for New York State.
yeah, I think a lot of people, especially on the local government school district level, are really hoping for some federal
We are.
funds to help bridge that gap. But
We've
I think
already
it's
communicated with Higgins on the federal level, and then, of course, our local ones in New York are working on it also.
Yep.
So we're hoping.
yeah, I think I agree. There's a lot of people working very hard to do that because it's so important, and you're
Right.
seeing the big, how much a 20% cut could impact a
That's
district such as West Seneca. So, that's certainly out there. I would still operate under, and I think you have,
Right.
a conservative approach in adjusting the estimates as you see them.
Yeah, thanks.
All right? All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks, you too.
And we're watching those pennies, believe me. Okay, now we have the public comment on agenda items only. So the public comment section is time set aside for the community to speak directly to the Board of Education. You should note that the first public comment section is only for items related to the agenda items. The second session, which is at the end, is for any other comments. Each speaker is given 3 minutes with a total allotted time to last no more than 30 minutes. When called, when you come up, please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please be respectful in your comments and do not divulge any personal or confidential information like names, specific situations, things like that. Board members and superintendent and administrators will not answer specific questions or engage in dialogue. The information shared will be carefully considered, and the appropriate person will contact you. If you'd like to be contacted, please leave your name and your information with the district clerk. So is there anybody that would like to speak on an agenda item?
The agenda items, just the 3 presentations we just heard?
No, it's anything that is on this document, on the agenda, like any of the personnel or reports or anything like that. And then at the end, any comments about whatever we'll take. So is there anybody that wants to speak on an agenda item? Okay, so we'll go on to the agenda item, and I'm assuming our agenda should be pretty quick tonight. So for 4A, we have for personnel certified, we have a tenure appointment. For B, we're just filling positions. For 5, we have for personnel classified, that's usually the CSEA. We have some resignations. We have unpaid leave of absence. We have some replacements, some permanent positions, and D, permanent positions that were probationary, but now, because they've been in there for a while, they're now permanent. So can I have a motion to accept from 4A to 5D from a board member?
Is there a reason why we can't do the whole agenda? There aren't any
Yes, because
eliminations?
for 4E, because we're creating a position,
Okay, all
we
right.
have to do a separate vote on that.
Right, okay.
Okay.
I'll move on.
Okay,
the
Mrs.
first
Delbo, can I have a second?
And I'll second.
Was that Mr. Siebert? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
When we're in a line, we can't see. Is there any discussion on any of those items?
I have a question on 4B. Is that the 1.0 position that was created? Or is this an additional one?
For 4B, that's, we created that, I think, at the last meeting.
Okay.
It was a .49 that we,
Okay.
that we, like, and then we put a full-time in, but that was already created.
Correct.
Okay? So we're just filling that position. All right, any other comments? Okay, can we have a vote? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, I didn't hear anybody, so that's carried 7-0. Okay, so for 5E, we are creating 2 positions, and fortunately, they don't have a salary, I don't think. There are 2 interns for our academy at West Senior, no, at the Teacher Center and at the academy office. So we have different academies, and these students are doing their internships with those academies, because right now it's a little difficult for students to get internships, because in our academies, students are required as part of the program to have an internship. So businesses, it's tough to place students in businesses right now. So can I have a motion to create those 2 positions?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Kwiatkowski? Okay, and can I have a second?
I'll second.
Is that Jody? Okay. And any discussion on those? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, carried 7-0.
Diane, if I could just add too, we just had an academy meeting with all the advisory board last week where it was discussed, we're looking for opportunities for kids to have the in-person internships too. So that really means, we're reaching out and working with our local partners. So that is something that we're working to create more opportunities for kids to do.
Yeah, so if anybody has a business or has some expertise and would like to take one of our interns, that would be great. It would really help the kids out. Okay, so for 6, for personnel, we have some coaches, community ed, mentors, preferred subs, home instruction, AIS, some advisors for different clubs once we get in the swing of things. For 7, we have our financial reports. 8A, for participation in government students, they usually have to personally attend a meeting. Since they're not able to do that right now, we're giving them a waiver that if they watch a meeting virtually, that will count. The contract with Dr. Stevenson, we need to approve. Our external audit report, the transfer to fund balance. So these are all reports or items that need to be approved. So can I have approval on those? Can I have somebody to make a motion?
Oh, I'll move on them, sure.
Okay, Mrs. Delbo, can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Siebert. Any discussion on those? And the board members have had this information to go over if they do have questions or concerns. So any questions?
No, I just appreciate all the gratis. A lot of people are helping without paying,
yes,
too.
yeah.
Nice to have them.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, can I have a vote? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. So, like I said, tonight we have a quick meeting. So now we have the second public comments. If you come up to the podium, do we have a list of people who have signed up, or are they just, okay, they can just come up. Don't rush all at once. So you have 3 minutes to speak, no more than 30 minutes. And we will not answer your questions, but the district clerk will take the information down and we will get back to you because we don't want to give you a rush answer to anything. We want to give you a thoughtful answer. And so the appropriate person will contact you. So if anybody would like to come up to the podium and speak, you're welcome to just come up. Okay, we have one taker. And if you just say your name, your address, and please do not mention students' names or teachers' names or things like that.
Okay, my name is Carrie. I'm not going to release my address. My last name is Yax. My student goes to elementary school, and I just had a couple questions in regards to where we were and where we are going. I'm his biggest advocate, and I have to say that I speak for probably 50% of other parents out there in regards to the children. So I wanted to know, because I had asked several times and text messages and that, or Facebook, about who made the decision, to close schools. Was it a board member? Was it superintendent? Was it a joint decision? What were the stats when you first asked about, from parents, the questionnaire? What were the stats? How many parents said yes? How many parents said no? I never received that. The second thing I want to say, kudos to the teachers. I sit there listening to these teachers, and God bless them and their patience, because this has been just crazy for them, and they have stepped up. I just have to say, absolutely love them, and they are supportive of the kids. I can hear it on the phone. My next thing is, we talked about trauma-informed with the lady who just spoke. Are the teachers not educated on trauma-informed already? Is that not a requirement, and shouldn't it be? These children have gone through trauma in the past, and these teachers shouldn't have trauma-informed training before they're a teacher or even introduced. because trauma-informed should be something reevaluated every few years. They're not just traumatized from this, but for what they're living, because now some of them are stuck at home. Domestic violence is up. They are stuck in these homes with these parents. I do social work, so I'm out and about in homes of families who are struggling. Some of the parents can't even understand the computers. They can't help their kids. They don't know how to work it. I really feel if we talk about transparency, and this is my opinion, I feel like the children should have gone and learned the programming of the computers initially, and then if we needed to in February or December, if we needed to then bring kids out because of flu or COVID or anything, that's how it should have worked. That is my idea. That is how I feel, because kids are struggling. Their parents are struggling at home. They don't have the support. They don't have the education like majority of us when we really look at it. And I just have to say, I really feel that it wasn't, I feel like the parents weren't heard. I really do have to say that. And I feel like the kids aren't being heard. But again, I'm going to praise those teachers up and down and give them kudos, because they've done fantastic. And when I called to share about my son struggling, they were on it. They were all calling me, giving support if he needs this, if he needs that. So I will say that for the teachers and the school he's in. But I really feel as a district, Orchard Park is in. Catholic school kids are in 5 days a week. They have plexiglass. They don't wear their masks. What's the difference? I mean, really, I just feel that, again, that's my feelings. Take it as you do, but I really want to know what the stats were. How many parents at the beginning wanted kids in and how many parents didn't. So I just really wish they would have been educated on these Chromebooks and that, instead of just throwing them a Chromebook and saying, figure it out. That wasn't fair. My kid was crying for 2 hours. He is not a computer kid. He is an outside playing kid. He struggles every day trying to figure out how to work those Chromebooks. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Lynn Gibbs. I live at 76 Sunset Creek Drive. I am not only a parent of a 5th grader at West Elementary, but I'm also a lunch monitor. And so, as you can imagine, it's a different world right now with the kids at home. And I want to piggyback on what she said, and I was nodding my head, we're struggling. There are many districts, including Holland and Maryvale and other parents I've spoken to, that these kids are back. And the teachers, the aides are doing as best they can, and I know they've been putting a lot of extra hours in to help our kids. But, you know, and I know there was talk of the hybrid, but to me as a parent and talking to other parents of kids, I just have one child in 5th grade, but the parents who have 2, 3, 4 kids, if there's other districts that can accommodate the situation, I think it's not only boils down to educating our kids as normally as possible, but the mental health, because there are several kids that I know for a fact that have developmental issues and are, it's really tough. And fast forward to next year when they're in 6th grade and they're in middle school, how much farther are they going to be behind? And that's, you know, that's my concern. And I would just really like to impress upon the need for the kids to go back as soon as possible. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Mark Shoecraft. I live at 552 East and West Road. I think the first public commenter speaks for more than 50% of the parents out here. I sent an email on 9/16 voicing my concerns and struggles with all things remote learning and the negative domino effect it has had on everyone. Remote learning is not helping the kids or working parents for that matter. Mr. Bystrak, to his credit, responded not only via email, but also with a phone call. That lends to leadership, representation, and ownership, so thank you. Whereas I did not expect anything to change as a result of the conversation that followed the email. As Mr. Bystrak claimed, one of the reasons for remote learning comes from following state guidelines. But at least he responded, and then he took the time to listen. Not responding to my email, like every other board member here that was sent it, lends to a true lack of concern, in my opinion. Much like any other employee that has a job and hides behind their superior's decisions without responding and fighting for what is actually right. I'll jump back to the state guideline excuse for a moment. Why is there presumably different guidelines for different school districts? Orchard Park, Williamsville, private school, for example. Why wait until mid-November to go hybrid, which, as everyone knows, is code for after the election? Present day, it's left up to the parents to teach the kids. As the first public commenter said, kudos to the teachers, but who's checking that the children are completing the assignments that are assigned at home and or following up that the kids understand and retain the information? In my opinion, I feel as I should be paid as a teacher since I'm the one teaching my child. Some might say even receive all the cushy perks and pay that the useless union provides their own without true concern for the kids. Furthermore, and lastly, I should not be responsible for my school taxes until school's back in 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to have a comment?
Good evening. My name is Kristen Zappia, 367 Collins Ave. I don't want to sound like a broken record because it's pretty much just everything that you heard from these folks, and I commend you for what you had said. I do, and I'm expressing that, but I have two kids. I have a high schooler and an elementary school. My high schooler is thankfully doing great. My young son is unfortunately not. We struggle every single day. I do work full-time. My significant other, my husband, he does work full-time also. I do commend my son's teacher this year. Unfortunately, last year we struggled a lot with his teacher, and this year his new teacher has really stepped up. But to her point, I don't think just for her to have that knowledge as to who came up with this, who voted, what parents said that they did, that they didn't, why wasn't even the option there from us in the beginning. My sister is a teacher in Iroquois, and like I said, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think it's different if we email you guys, if we call you guys, for then you to see us face to face and how much your children's parents are struggling every single day. My 14-year-old is basically helping his brother every single day to learn, and that's not going to get him anywhere. So to just kind of inform us a little bit more or come up with a better plan and really letting us know, and I don't feel like we've been informed as much as we possibly could be. I don't know if I'm missing something, but that's really just my question, is to let us know more of the information as to why our kids didn't go back to school and everybody else did. Thank you.
My name is Mary Lou Hutton, 5 Century Drive. I'm going to be the lone voice of dissent, so I apologize to everyone while I understand, because I wanted school to start. I'm a teacher in one of those private schools, and it's not ideal. It's really not ideal. The windows have to be left open so it's freezing. We wear gloves and hats and boots and jackets because we need circulation in the room. Classrooms are small. I know what they're like because my son went through West Elementary. I know how crowded West Middle is. I'm glad he's not in the building. Wearing the mask all day is horrible. So like the fact that you take your masks off sitting up there, if I'm teaching, I can't have my mask off. So this is all day, and it's very uncomfortable. So while I was not at all happy, I wanted my son back in school. I think he needed to be back in school. I'm rolling with it as best I can, but I'm recognizing as an educator myself that I don't necessarily know that I want him back. Like, he wouldn't be riding a bus, I know that much, which means I would have to alter my schedule to bring him to school and home from school. Orchard Park, all these schools that people are referencing, they're doing hybrid. None of those schools are in school full-time. Private schools are in 5 days a week. It's also way smaller numbers. Like, you're talking class sizes under 20 in these private schools. They can fit all those students. So I commend all of you for at least thinking all of that through. I know we need a plan, and they have to get back to school. I would hope it's sooner rather than later. But I think that the systems that are in place, I don't count last year. I'm sorry, but last year was such a, like, when school ended, I don't hold that against anyone. It's in the past, it's over, it's done with. But what I've seen this year with the planning and the use of technology and the way teachers are teaching, so I know what's happening with others, but I watch how the teachers teach the students how to use the online tools. They give tutorials, they explain to them. So, no, it's not ideal, and we should have been using technology years ago, but we weren't. Said and done. Moving forward now, teachers should always teach with technology. It should be integral, an integrated part of our classrooms from here on out in the West Seneca School District. It's not, oh, we're back in school, let's put the technology aside. There should be continuous technology advancement, because when they get to college, when they get to work, more jobs are remote more than ever. So I just think it's important. And while I fully respect everyone that's struggling, because I have friends who are struggling, I know it's a struggle. I feel it too myself when, you know, I have to go to work and my son's home. So I just think it's important that we move forward and in a positive way and find the good in all of this and let everything else aside. But I do want to say, I think they're doing a great job, and I appreciate what they are doing when I ask for help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay. We all set then? Do you want to say anything, or?
Folks, I know that Mrs. Bears had started off by just kind of reading our rules, and we don't give like specific response for a reason. Honestly, we don't like to answer off the cuff. But I guess if I could address some of these, and I don't know if anybody left their phone numbers and wants me to call them, so I didn't see that happen. So in this case, I'm just going to throw it out there, some sort of general statements to respond. There's obviously a bit of a trend in terms of the way people are asking questions. First, Mr. Shoecraft, I just want to say that the board and we all got your email, and I said, hey, I'll reach out to him. It wasn't any lack of caring or concern. I just wanted to say that, because that's not my experience with this board. I just wanted to say that. That doesn't diminish any of your other things. But I just wanted to let you know that. No, they're my boss. They oversee me, so we work together. I mean, they charge me with implementing the instructional program for the district. So, but I just wanted to say that I wouldn't want you to walk out of here thinking that they didn't care or anything like that. I said, hey, I'll get back to you. We got a lot of emails, as you can imagine. That's all. But speaking globally to some of the questions that I saw, there's some people were asking, like, hey, how many parents were, like, there was a survey that went out throughout, like, I think it was 17 out of like the 19 districts, and Erie won BOCES back in like June, and we were asking, hey, you know, just a question like who wants to be in session. There was a lot of questions. I don't have that in front of me right now. I'm just going to tell you the vast majority of people, probably 70% of parents, were saying that they wanted their kids back in June when we did this survey. So there's no, we're not hiding that or anything. We actually had the survey on our website for a while. It might even still be there for all I know, but we're not shying away from that. And as far as who made the decision, I can tell you that we got a lot of feedback from people, and frankly, I can tell you most parents probably were saying, yeah, we did want our kids to be back in school. I'm going to own that, okay? Because I, had a conversation with, multiple stakeholders within our district, all right, people that had to implement some of this programming. And again, I'm not giving you an answer that maybe you're going to love. I'm just telling you that we felt it was the safest way. I thought about it from an educational standpoint, from a safety standpoint. At this point, you're absolutely right. Everybody's saying that people have kids back in session. The vast majority of districts in this area do have their kids back in session. Even the ones that are just kind of starting now, they're just working through it. One of the priorities that we identified, one of the big ones, aside from safety, really was something that was going to be meaningful daily contact with students. All right, and I know I've talked a little bit about this if anybody's watched any of my videos. And I do that just because I feel it's an easier way to communicate with people. But just to put it out there, that's one of those things that, if we, as I talked about, working to bring elementary students back online, back in for some in-person learning, we do see the value of that. That's something we're honestly targeting in November to be able to start phasing them back into campus for a portion of the time. But if we're going to do that, I don't want to sacrifice what we have. Every person that stood up here said the teachers are doing a phenomenal job, and I appreciate you saying that, first of all, because it's a tough job. But it's also, it's working to the extent that because teachers have these time buckets and the structure built into place that they can communicate with kids. They can't do two things at once. So they can take care of the kids that they're seeing and that they're able to engage with. So when we, not if we, but when we work to be able to bring our students back in, we want it to be meaningful for them. We don't want to sacrifice some of the instructional, and I don't even say time. I don't look at it just about minutes. It's not all about how many minutes do they get in a given day, because there's a value to being physically in front of someone. I don't recall who it was. Somebody said they were a social worker. I'm sorry. It was Yes. Yeah. Hey, I was too, to be honest with you. That's my gig as well. And I just had a conversation as recently as about 3 hours ago about, I think, calls to the Department of Social Services are probably a little depressed, a little lower at this point. You might say that's a good thing, but it also could be a function of kids not being in school and not seeing. That's the primary reporting source. I'm making your point for you, by the way. But from that standpoint, I see the value in being able to physically engage with kids. Physically, like you're in front of you and you're able to see them and talk to them. And it does build, I think it helps to build and facilitate a strong relationship with those kids. And it's going to help carry us through. We have good engagement right now. Attendance is great, but I want to see that continue. And I think that physically being, present with kids on a regular basis is important. So in the coming next week or so, I would like to be able to communicate some specific ideas and thoughts that we have that is going to accomplish that goal of safety, but also daily meaningful contact with our students, right? Because I don't want to be in a situation where there's kids on the days off, they're just on their own completely, where there's no interaction with teachers. And that's my biggest fear, is that we're going to have that. And I don't know that that's any better than what, I know it's not better in my opinion. It's just my philosophy here is that we need to be engaging on a daily basis. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on I think I'm past my 3 minutes, but I just wanted to be able to say that to everyone here. You're hearing me say this, it's live streamed, someone's recording this, we're recording this, it'll be on the website tomorrow. This is something that we are committed to being able to do. So, and I guess from that standpoint, our next step is we're going to be engaging. We have some family, we have a couple of parents that are coming in to sit and talk with us a little bit, but we know what parents want at this point. They want their kids, the ones that do want their kids to be in school. I know there is a significant portion. I will tell you, I've gotten a ton of emails and phone calls from parents that say, don't fix it, it ain't broke. We're trying to find the best of both worlds here, okay, in a safe way. So we don't want to sacrifice the instructional integrity of our programming. So just, again, I'm sorry to ramble on, but this is important.
And we want to thank everybody for their comments. We do listen to the comments, and like I said, what we've decided between the board and the superintendent is we know pieces, he knows all the pieces. And so when an email needs to be responded to, we leave that up to him to respond to, because he's the expert in the area. We're the support system, but he's the expert in the area. So I just want you to know we do take all your concerns at heart. I'm a grandmother, and we have other grandmothers and parents on the board, and we care about kids. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this for nothing. But anyways, so we really, appreciate your comments and your concerns. We appreciate you coming out tonight. That takes a lot of gumption to come up to the podium and give your thoughts and your, impressions. So we really appreciate that. Okay, I just have a couple of announcements. We have an Albany update. I just hope it's not depressing news for the Erie County School Board Association with David Little on Thursday, November 12th at BOCES. So if you want to, I know our district clerk sent out an email on that today. We also have a legislative breakfast in November. And our next work session is October 27th. Okay, anyone else have anything, any comments, concerns from the board? Okay, like I said, we appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Is that Mr. Okay, Mr. Kwiatkowski and Mrs. Delbo seconded. Any discussion?
Go Bills.
Okay. Yeah, everybody wants to get out for that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, have a wonderful evening. And again, thanks for coming out.